because even once you are out, and we'll talk about different ways of how to prepare yourself to get out and how to escape in the next episode. But I want you to understand that even when you have escaped physically, the mental and emotional damage has already been done, and you need to be diligent and intentional about your mental and emotional healing. Welcome to the Church Hurt Recovery Podcast with your host, Soneakqua J, where we'll walk through the question, what in the church happened to you? I am a licensed professional counselor in the states of Texas and Ohio, where I work with people dealing with anxiety, depression, and religious trauma, also known as church hurt. But this is not therapy. This is a podcast highlighting social and emotional learning skills and strategies that will help you manage your thoughts, feelings, emotions, decisions, and relationships as it pertains to everyday life, but specifically for the church. If you like what you're hearing, please give us a subscribe so that you never miss an episode. Grab your water and your journal, and let's jump in. Hello and welcome back to the Church Hurt Recovery Podcast, where we ask the question, what in the church happened to you? And then we talk about social and emotional learning skills and strategies that will help you manage your thoughts, feelings, emotions, decisions, and relationships in everyday life, but specifically in the church. I am your host, Soneakqua J, and again, welcome back to the Church Hurt Recovery Podcast. We have been in our series about cult behavior and what it's like to be in a cult, come out of a cult, and have to deal with the aftermath. And today I'm going to issue another trigger warning, as I have in the past couple of sessions, just because this is a very sensitive topic and that some of the things that I say may trigger tough emotions, deep emotions. If that happens to you, turn the broadcast off, do something to ground yourself, meaning to bring yourself back to where you are now, and to always remember that even if you get triggered, you are still in a safe place now, unless you aren't. So if I'm talking to you now and you are not in a safe place, please do not watch this episode. Please get to a safe place. And in another episode, I'm going to talk about safety planning, but this is not the episode I'm going to do that in. But if you are watching this video from a place that you are not safe, you are currently in a cult, please begin to make the preparations that you need to get yourself to safety. Okay, well, with that being said, today I want to talk about a specific story. And again, typically when I am talking about people, I am not making up a story. I am talking about somebody who this has actually happened to, that I am either working with or I have known personally. I am going to change the name of the person for this broadcast, even though I do have their permission to talk about this. I am going to change the name of the person because I am going to talk to you in a way that this is because I want you to understand how someone could end up in a cult unintentionally, and how, because you are already in a tricky emotional and mental state, maybe even in a tricky physical state, or sexually or spiritually, or you're already being abused or have been abused. And it's pretty easy, I will say, for you to end up in a place where you didn't intend to end up. And for a lot of people that find themselves in cults, it is typically because they are looking for a belonging or some place to feel safe, secure, wanted, loved, needed. And cult leaders are very good at capitalizing on the vulnerabilities of people who are in those states where they are just looking to be loved and belonged. So I'm going to tell you about the story of Ava. Remember, this is actually a true documentation of a person who found themselves in a cult. Ava started having struggles at a very early age. Her Father was very abusive. Her mother was not, but was unable for the most part to protect the children from the abuse of the father. When Ava was 14, her mother passed away. Many believe that it was due to her father's beatings. Others believe that it was something different. To this day, Ava maintains that it was not from her father. The mom died from a different situation, but it left Ava with an abusive father. Her older sister was out of the house. Her older brother was out of the house. So it basically left Ava by herself with an abusive father. And as Ava went through this process of grieving and looking for her mother and not really understanding death, many of the people around her had good intentions, but they told her that God had her mother, and that if she wanted to see her mother again, she would need to believe in God and find God. So, as a young person, not really understanding what this meant, Ava went on a search of finding God. What she found was a series of people who claimed to be people of God, who brought more harm to her than her father ever did. So she was already used to being abused. So she found herself in several other situations where she was abused even before she found herself in the cult. The way she got into the occult, again, she was looking for God, and she thought that being in the church would help her find God, therefore being able to see her mother again, since God was the one who had her mother. This was the phraseology that the people used. So to a child who was underdeveloped, it made sense as to what she was doing in the way that she was looking for God, to find her mother again. So she found also a person who became a mother figure in a sense to her. But what this mother figure is was a recruiter for the cult leader. So Ava found herself in this cult. When she first walked in, she started realizing that things were not right. But because of her desire to find her mom and the things that she wanted to be belonging, and to be wanted, to have someone who desired her, to treat her like a mother figure, to help her. So she started going along, and as she went along with the recruiter, she found herself in a cult situation. The leader said that this was a church. And when Ava would call out things that didn't seem appropriate, he would say things like, God knows my heart. And I'm smarter than you. I'm the pastor, so I know better than you. So as a young person, now Ava wasn't 14 anymore at this time. She was an adult, able to make decisions on her own. But even though in age she was an adult, mentally and emotional, she was not mature in this way. So when Ava got into this cult situation, she was abused in every way that you could think of. She was physically, sexually, spiritually, emotionally, mentally abused. And she got in so deep that she could not find her way out, even when she tried to escape. So she did try several times to escape, but there was physical force. There were guns pulled on her. They would show up and get into her house in the middle of the night. So there were fear tactics. There were scare tactics. There were physical things that actually happened. She was physically abused. She was sexually assaulted and abused as a way to keep her under their control. And each time something happened or something new would happen, the person who she looked at as a mother figure, who was also a recruiter for the cult, would play on her emotions and tell her things like, oh, just do this for me. And, just if you would just do this for me, I will do this for you and this would happen. And so there were emotional things because Ava was and is still a person who has a heart for people. And so if you were to tell her in those moments that I need you, if you do this for me, it would really help me out. She would be lulled and bribed and tricked into doing things that just reeled her deeper and deeper into the cult behavior. And so these are some of the things that so she was being abused on several levels. She was being abused by the person who became a mother figure, not knowing if this person really wanted to be a mother figure to her, or if this was just a tactic because the person knew that her mother had died at a young age and that she basically grew up without her mom for some of those teenage years. So this could have been just a tactic that the person was using on her to bring her in, to pretend to want to be a mother figure to bring her into this cult. Whether it was real or not, it worked for Ava. And then feeling like from the leader, she needed to do some of these things that he was asking and forcing her to do. Some of the things were asked, some of the things were forced. So when they were asked, she felt like she had a choice. But in actuality, her mother figure would come on the back end and make it seem like she really didn't have a choice, that if she would do these things, it would be helpful for her. So Ava got in so deep that then eventually she became a recruiter herself and started bringing in other people into the cult, into the organization. And when she finally was able to leave, she tried to bring out one of the young ladies that she had recruited in, but the young lady had now basically replaced her. She was told that she was Ava's replacement. So then she was now in Ava's place where she felt like she couldn't leave because she was needed there. And she had to do the things that Ava was doing. So Ava was actually able to get out of the cult. Now, it had been years that she had been in. But at this point, I believe she was only able to escape because she had already recruited her replacement. Now, I'm sure that the cult leader would have allowed her to stay, but because she did recruit someone else into the organization, into the cult, she was able to leave. But so Ava believed that once she was able to get out physically, that she was okay. But the real damage that was done was the emotional and mental damage. And to this day, Ava is a very sick person in her body, but it is believed that a lot of the sickness is due to the physical and emotional pain and trauma that she has gone through. And she is still working her way through these things. She is a lot better. But I wanted to tell you this part of the story because even once you are out, and we'll talk about different ways of how to prepare yourself to get out and how to escape in the next episode. But I want you to understand that even when you have escaped physically, the mental and emotional damage has already been done, and you need to be diligent and intentional about your mental and emotional healing. You cannot do this probably with just going to church and finding another church that is healthy, even if the church is healthy. And there are plenty of healthy churches out there that you do need to find. But I am going to say, and not because I am a therapist, but because I have just seen the results and the damage that this type of happening can do to a person, you do need therapy. You will need therapy. you will probably need to be deprogrammed, because there's a lot of brainwashing that goes on in cults that make you believe that your leader is right, you're wrong, and if you leave, other things might happen to you. And for Ava, that was happening for a while. Like I said, I believe the only reason she was really able to escape was that she found someone to replace her. And then all the things that were being done to Ava started being done to the new girl. And so Ava was able to get out physically, but emotionally, she carried a lot of pain, emotional damage, trauma that she needed to work her way through. And because she was unaware in the beginning, I believe it took Ava a lot longer to work through than it would take somebody else who understood what they had gotten into and how to completely get themselves out and work themselves out. So I want you to understand that even when you have physically escaped a cult, you will need to work through an emotional and mental part of these things, and that will take therapy. However, I will talk to you on this podcast about social and emotional learning skills, tools, strategies that you can use. So the self-awareness part comes from you understanding that you have been in a very traumatic situation for years, and you need to be able to get yourself out. And it's going to take more than you physically escaping for you to be out and be healed. You don't want to just exist because you got out. Some people are just so excited, and you should be, that you were able to escape, but you will go into a way of just existing and not living if you don't come all the way out mentally and emotionally. Find yourself some help. Understand that you need help. You cannot do this on your own. So self-management is where you do the actions, where you realize that you're going to get the help, you actually go get it, and you walk through the process. And let me just warn you that the process of untangling yourself from a cult emotionally and mentally is not easy. It's not pretty. It's painful, because sometimes you have to walk back through mentally and emotionally what happened to you to untangle yourself from it. So self-management plays a huge role here, where you understand that you need to learn how to ground yourself, that you need to realize that you are physically safe in the moment that you're working through, but it will feel like you are right back in that cult, and it will be scary. That's why you cannot do this work alone. You have to have social awareness, because you were in a tumultuous social environment. You were around lots of people. So you were in a social environment. So your social awareness now at this point needs to be understanding what is a healthy person for you to even be around. And it's probably not going to be a whole lot of people, because you might also have some fear of being around a lot of people. So you're going to want to understand how your social environment should be set up, so that you're in a safe place, whether that is in some kind of support group, whether that is in some kind of shelter that very safe and understands what you've been through. And this may not be just a general homeless shelter or something like that. This may be a specified type of organization and group that you might need to be in, that is more aware of where you've been and how you need to work through. Okay, so your social environment now becomes very important to your safety. The decisions that you make, well, let's talk about the relationships first. The relationship skills now that you need to develop have to be revamped. You now need to relearn who you can trust, who might be loyal. What do even characteristics of people that you can trust now look like? are you going to be able to be in a church related environment yet to build relationships that you are going to want to build eventually? But the relationships that you build now may be more of professional than friendships. You may have a friend who is very understanding, who you can talk to, but some of your relationships now are going to be your therapist, the people who you are working with to keep you safe, your support system. So those become very important relationships to you now. And then the decisions that you make will ultimately, you have to think of the decisions that you need to make to get you to a healthy place. And those healthy places have to be all the places that weren't healthy before. The decisions that you make now have to put you in position where you are healthy physically and safe physically, emotionally, mentally, sexually, spiritually. All of those things where you were not safe before now have to be safe. And the decisions that you make have to put you on the road to being safe in all of those places, maybe before you even step foot in another church or build other relationships, because you need to know and make the proper decisions that will lead you in the right direction and not toward hurting you again. Because sometimes when you walk out of a painful situation, if you don't have all of these social and emotional learning skills and strategies, you may be in jeopardy of putting yourself back into the same situation, even though on the onset it doesn't look the same. And so that's how you can be again lulled into a different situation. And I will say that this is what happened to Ava. Ava got free of the cult, but then she walked into another relationship that did some damage as well, because she thought that the people who could protect her physically from the cult, she didn't realize that emotionally and mentally she was walking back into some more damage that even turned out to have some physical issues and concerns as well. So when you're not healed from all of the aspects, physical, emotional, mental, sexual, spiritual, you will likely walk into another situation. Yes, it may be less fearful. It may be less of intense as where you were before, but it doesn't mean that it's healthy. So I want you to understand that you have to physically get yourself out, then you have to mentally and emotionally get yourself out, and then you have to build for yourself all those safety plans and strategies so that you are safe in all areas of your life. Okay, so I'm going to end this episode here with Ava's story, just so you understand how some people can get into these things. You're just looking to belong, and then you ultimately end up somewhere where you really don't belong. And so I always stress for Christians, because this podcast is for those of us who are believers in Jesus Christ, that you know your word for yourself, so that it is more difficult for people to lull you into something by using spirituality, using Jesus, using the church against you, because you don't know the word and because they do. The word can be twisted, as you can see. The devil knows the Bible, and he twists it and perverts it. That's the only way he uses the word of God, is to twist it and pervert it. And that's what happens with cults. They may use the Bible, but they will twist it and pervert it. So you need to know the word yourself so that you know when it's being twisted or perverted. This this podcast does not take the place of therapy. So again, I will reiterate that if you are in a cult, if you have come out of one, please seek professional help so that you can get all the tools, skills, and everything that you need. Okay. If you have not liked the broadcast, if you have not subscribed to the channel, please do that so that you don't miss the upcoming episodes. I will be back soon with more, but until then, be proactive about your mental health. Be well, and God bless. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Church Hurt Recovery Podcast. I hope you've learned something, and if you did, please remember to subscribe. Also, remember that this podcast is for educational purposes only. It does not take the place of therapy. So if you need professional assistance, please seek that out. Until we meet again, be proactive about your mental health, be well, and God bless.